Today I'm going to show you guys how to make an insane amount of attacks non-stop with the all-new MirageGaogamon Burst Mode Deck. Digimon fans, welcome back, and today we'll be showcasing the updated version of the MirageGaogamon deck. After EX4 and BT13, the deck now has a ton of super reliable support. The archetype has a bunch of effects that return your opponent's Digimon back to their hand and makes both players draw cards at the same time. By doing so, you can gain a ton of advantages and make a ton of attacks in one turn out of nowhere. It may seem strange at first since you're helping your opponents draw more cards, but don't worry, I'll be showing you guys all the cool combos and how to play the deck later as well, so let's just get started with the deck profile first. Like always, we start with the Digi-Egg cards, 4 copies of Wanyamon, very simple. When attacking once returned, if you have a blue tamer in play, you get to draw one. We do try to play as many blue tamers as we can and to fulfill that condition, and draw power is always really nice, very consistent, and yeah, 4 Digi-Egg cards is all you need for this deck. Let's get into rookies. 4 copies of the Gaogamon from BT13. It is your main searcher of the deck, grabbing yourself a Gaogamon in its name and also a blue tamer card among them when it's on play. Keep in mind that you actually trash the rest of the pieces that you search with it. It has a inheritable of when attacking once returned. If you have a tamer in play, you get to return one of your opponent's level 3 Digimon back to their hand. So really good at getting rid of like smaller Digimon in general or floodgates in general as well, which is definitely one to be seeing as much as you can. I'm super excited to be making a bunch of other new BT13 decks, and if you guys want to see all the upcoming videos, then be sure to subscribe, turn on that notification bell right now to stay tuned. I actually already also posted a bunch of BT13 deck lists on the Avault Club membership tab, so if you want to see them right away, join the Avault Club right now by clicking on the join button or in the link in the description box down below. Also give this video a like while you're at it, and I greatly appreciate the support from all of you. Moving into our other Gaomons, we got another 4 copies of the newer one from BT13. It has a very simple effect of when attacking once returned, both players draw 1 card from their decks. It has the inheritable of all turns while your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand. This Digimon gain extra 1000 DP. An extra 1000 DP is going to help out a lot usually, which is super good. But we also then play 4 copies of the EX4 Gaomon. This one is a little bit more better, which I think with on play, you instantly both players draw the top card of their decks. And with its inheritable, it also lets you gain a memory when an effect adds a card to your opponent's hand once returned as well. So yeah, these are basically the 3 different types of Gaomons you want to fulfill for the entire archetype and names. And let's get into our level 4s. 4 copies of Gaogamon from EX4. This one, when digivolving, simply just returns your opponent's level 3 Digimon back to their hand. We're going to be seeing a lot of these because we're going to bounce a lot of level 3s. We're going to be doing a lot of bouncing effects as well to synergize with the entire deck. With its inheritable, your turn once returned, when an effect adds a card to your opponent's hand, you get to gain a memory. So you're going to be seeing a lot of that as well to help you make more plays, and gaining memory is always super nice. Then we got 4 copies of the BT11 Gaogamon right here. This one, when attacking once returned, if your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand, you get to gain a memory. Inheritable, when attacking once returned, if you have a tamer in play, return one of your opponent's level 3 Digimon back to their hand. And once again, lots of bouncing on smaller Digimon as you guys can see, but this kind of scales up as you go up the Digivolution line, which is always going to be super crucial. And the reason why you want to bounce things is because it can synergize a lot with your other effects. Then, to round off for all of our Gaogamons, we got 2 copies of BT13 one. This is a very standard level 4, which is really great for when digivolving. If you don't have a Thomas, you get to play 1 Thomas from your hand for free. And yeah, 2 copies is really all you need, simply because it requires you to not have a Thomas to play it. Once you have a Thomas on board, it doesn't give you as much value otherwise. And then has the inheritable all turns while your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand. This Digimon gets extra 1000 DP. So again, DP is great to have. That's it for all of our level 4s. Let's talk about our level 5s. First and foremost, with the 4 copies of a so-called newer MirageGaogamon from EX4. We definitely want to see this one as much as possible because this one's when digivolves simply returns one of your opponent's Digimon that's level 4 or lower straight back to their hand. It has the inheritable of when attacking once returned, if your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand. Unsuspending means we can make multiple swings, multiple attacks, really good. And that's how we sort of apply our pressure when it comes to getting advantages when attacking. Then we got 2 copies of the MirageGaogamon from BT13. This one is when attacking, your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand for the turn. This Digimon's attack target can't be switched. This is actually really nice and crucial because if your opponent has like a blocker on the board, this can actually help you dodge blockers, which is really cool. Inheritables are actually going to be really similar for all the MirageGaogamons across because all turns once returned, when effect adds a card to your opponent's hand, you get to unsuspend this Digimon. So unsuspending again, really powerful, really good And then we got 2 copies of the BT13 Miragegaogamon here. When Digivolving until the end of your opponent's next turn, this Digimon gains Blocker, and it also gets extra 2000 DP for every 4 cards in your opponent's hand. So it can actually rack up and stack up a lot in multiples, which is going to be super useful for you, especially in the late games. It has the Inheritable, just like all the other Miragegaogamons like I mentioned earlier. All turns once per turn, when effect adds a card to your opponent's hand, you get to unsuspend this Digimon, so unsuspending again is always super nice. That's it for all of our level 5s. Let's talk about our level 6s. Our main boss Digimon of the deck is MirageGaogamon. We actually play 3 copies of the BT11 in particular. This one is the one that you always want to be seeing and getting into as much as possible because it has the when Digivolving effect, returning your opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon back to the owner's hand. If no Digimon was returned by this effect, your opponent adds the top card of their security stack to their hand, and this is actually really good because it's almost like trashing cards, and it also has a lot of synergy with adding cards back to your opponent's hand. So then you can gain a lot of memory with its secondary effect, whereas it has all turns once per turn. When effect adds a card to your opponent's hand, you get to gain a memory for every 4 cards in your opponent's hand as well. So really good effect because you can often enough retain your turn when you get into this guy, make some swings, and continue to play. And keep in mind, guys, this effect is super strong because it's all turns. So if your opponent draws cards during their turn, searches during their turn, you're going to gain memory and you can disrupt their turn. And this is what makes this card extremely powerful and extremely strong. Then for another MirageGaogamon, we definitely run 2 copies of the newer one from BT13. First and foremost as Evade, and when Digivolving, return one of your opponent's Tamers back to their hand. Really nice because you can remove your opponent's Tamers to establish even more momentum and advantages sometimes. And yeah, you can remove the crucial Tamers to really set them far behind, which is super good with this effect. It has a secondary effect of all turns once a turn. When effect adds a card to your opponent's hand, you get to play a Thomas for free without paying its memory cost, and you can continue to rack up more Thomases with this particular guy right here. So it's very nice, and yeah, definitely the secondary MirageGaogamon you want to be seeing. That's it for all of our level 6s. Let's talk about our level 7s, where we play 3 copies of MirageGaogamon Burst Mode right here. Magnificent, super powerful, cool looking card as well, and super excited. And this card is insanely crazy with all the effects I can do. Now, first and foremost, you can Digivolve for 5 costs on top of a regular level 6. However, you can burst Digivolve from a MirageGaogamon for 0 by returning a Thomas that you control back to your hand. And at the end of the turn that you burst Digivolve into this Digimon, you trash the top card. Basically, you trash the burst mode, and then you resolve back into your MirageGaogamon regularly. When Digivolving, return one of your opponent's Digimon to their hand. It can be anything. No levels requirements and no DP requirements whatsoever, which is really good. And you gain a memory for every 4 cards in your opponent's hand. Now, when attacking, not once per turn, if your opponent has 9 or more cards in their hand, by choosing cards in your opponent's hand without looking randomly, you put them all the way back to the bottom of the deck until they have 8 left. And this is how you utilize this specific card to make multiple swings, multiple attacks with all the other combos, with all your other effects. And because it's one attacking effect is not once per turn, which makes it super strong, finishing games, and yeah, just super powerful overall. That's it for all of our Digimon. Let's talk about our Tamers. We got 3 copies of the brand new Thomas from BT13 right here. This is your main memory tamer of the deck, starting your turn at 3 if you have 3 or less basically. And its secondary effect is your turn when one of your Digimon with Gaomon or Gaogamon in its name attacks. By suspending this tamer, both players draw 1 card from their decks. Now you guys might be thinking drawing cards for your opponent is kind of a bit of a disadvantage. However, this is a very key important combo that synergizes together with your MirageGaogamon, especially when it comes to your burst mode, so that you can gain memory, you can unsuspend, and continue to loop the combos over and over again with this particular card, which is extremely powerful. And I'll show you guys later in the combo segment of how it all works together. Then we got more Thomases. We got 2 copies of the BT4 Thomas. It has simply just the 3 costs to hard play it, but otherwise on play you trigger draw 1, which is nice. And main, if your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand, you can suspend this tamer to unsuspend any of your Digimon with Gao in its name, so you can make multiple attacks, multiple swings again with this particular card. It's just really nice to have for sure. Then for the rest of the Tamers, we got 2 copies of Nikolai right here from BT11. Start of your main phase, one of your Digimon with Gaomon or Gaogamon's name gain jamming for the turn, and then also your turn when effect adds a card to your opponent's hand. By suspending this Tamer, you get to gain a memory back, which is always going to be really nice for you as well. Again, memory is always going to be super good, so that you can make more plays and play more cards during the turn. That's it for all of our Tamers. Let's talk about our options. First, and with our removal option, we have Full Moon Meteor Impact, which is MirageGaogamon's Burst Mode signature move. Now for 8 costs, you return one of your opponent's Digimon back to their hand. Then you gain 1 memory for every 4 cards in your opponent's hand. So effectively, the later game this goes, the more cost effective this option becomes, because with all the effects that you make your opponent adds card back to their hand, you can effectively be playing this option card for way lower cost eventually, even for 6 or 4, which is super nice. And security, it just returns one of your opponent's Digimon back to their hand with no level restrictions, again, no caveats whatsoever. Really powerful security bomb, really powerful card again for the deck, and lots of synergy, definitely at least a 2 of. Then for the rest of the options, just really standard, 2 blue memory boosts right here, mainly for searching, gaining memory, making more plays, and all that kind of stuff. Just a really standard good staple. And then last but not least, the 1 Ice Wall, just because of Ice Wall. Honestly, this deck doesn't necessarily need to play Ice Wall. You can actually take out Ice Wall as a flex card and, add some other cards for more consistency's sake and whatnot. Totally up to you guys, but yeah, Ice Wall is super strong as a 1-of card, which is why I definitely include the 1-of no matter what. That's it for the 50 card main deck. Now let's talk about some other cards that you guys can tech in and change in and swap in depending on the whole meta and your personal playstyle and preferences. First and foremost, of course, we definitely have the Floodgate rookies, Madoki Betamon and Syakomon. Just interchange them with your rookies. Necessarily, not all your Gaomons are necessarily in the deck overall, so you can interchange between both of these whatever when the meta calls depend. Madoki Betamon great for countering against like gaining memory effects. Syako is just really good for helping against any cards or decks that reduce Digivolution costs. For another rookie that I can suggest, other than Gaomon, like I mentioned, Gaomon is actually not super necessary in the whole deck. I actually really like this Labramon because especially when you play it with the jamming combo with Nikolai as well, being able to have one attacking once per turn if this Digimon has jamming, gain, or memory is actually really nice as well for the deck, and definitely a really good one to sort of like, Digivolve into and build your stack with as well, just as a suggestion. Then for another level 4 suggestion, you guys can definitely play Lanamon, which is like the hybrid for game, essentially, just Digivolving for 2 on top of your Thomases or your Tamers, blue Tamers specifically, and then, make this sneaky swing, make an extra attack for a game. Really helpful all the time, so it's just a really good card, and yeah. Then for some really cool, interesting spice as another secondary level 6, you guys can play, instead of MirageGaogamon, is actually Z-Garurumon from EX4. This is actually particularly has quite a bit of synergy with the deck because it digivolves for 4 on top of a blue level 5. Now when digivolving, return one of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon back to their hand. And then, if they have 8 or more cards in their hand, you get to return one level 6 or higher Digimon back to their hand. So you can actually bounce multiple things with this particular card, and a very key note is that it also requires your opponent to have 8 or more cards in their hands, which again, has a lot of synergy. It has a secondary effect of all turns once per turn. When an effect adds a card to your opponent's hand while you have a Tamer, return one of your opponent's Digimon that is level 3 back to their hand again. So lots of multiple bouncing going on. You can remove whiteboards with this particular card, which is actually super good against some decks as well. So definitely really nice tech in, and you guys can see with all the effects, has a lot of synergy again with the whole MirageGaogamon combos and the core mechanic of what it's trying to do. Then for other options, you guys can definitely still play Hammer Spark. I will always suggest this because this is always a really strong blue staple. Gaining a memory instantly to make more plays, always really nice, but also mainly with the security effect. Gaining 2 memory instantly can just disrupt your opponent's turn, which is super crucial, or even pass turn back to you sometimes, because there's just simply nothing better than stopping your opponent from being able to play during their turn and they can't catch those surprises. Is just a really cool card to always have. And then last but not least, for another Ultra Spice right here, you guys can even play 1 copy of the Offensive Plug-in A right here, just for 2 costs. While you have a Tamer in play, you get to use this card without meeting any color requirements. Like again, you're always going to have a lot of Tamers set up on your board for your combos, so being able to play this allows you to have one of your Digimon gain security +1 for the turn. This can instantly help you, close games even faster with this one single tech, which is super powerful. Being able to make multiple swings, unsuspend, and basically do multiple checks at the same time can help you, again, finish games very quickly and your opponents really don't see it coming, which is really cool. Otherwise, the security effect is just still really good, searching your top 3 cards of your deck, adding 1 Tamer card among them to your hand, place the remaining back to the bottom in any order, and then you add this to your hand. So yeah, very cool one-off tech spice I can suggest for sure. Alright, that's it for all the cards I wanted to talk about and show you guys. Now let's move into the combos and how to play segment of this particular deck, and also show you guys potentially how powerful the MirageGaogamon Burst Mode, and as like I mentioned earlier, it can make so many swings and almost infinite depending on what your setup is overall. Of course, you want to be hatching your egg in the early stages of the game, digivolving into any Gaomons that you have in particular, and then usually you want to be digivolving your EX4 one and your BT13 one, and hard playing the BT11 one simply because it gives you the on-play searching capability so that you can grab yourself a Gaogamon, Digimon in its name, as well as a blue Tamer, and having blue Tamers are really important for this particular deck because you do want to set them up as much as you can. Seeing your Thomases and having them eventually later or sooner is always super crucial. Otherwise, the secondary one that you want to hard play is this Gaomon right here. It has on play, both players draw a card, but then you know, sometimes you just really need to draw that card to help you unbrick yourself and find your pieces and continue going. That's sort of your priority when it comes to. Otherwise, this one's the last one I usually digivolve into, the BT13 one, simply because you don't really get to resolve the when attacking as much, and paying 3 memory just to put a body on board that doesn't do too much doesn't seem to be too much value in my opinion. Now, as you're growing your stack into your level 4s, either Gaogamon from EX4 or BT11 works very nicely. If you want to make some early attacks with this Gaogamon in particular, just because your opponent might have 8 or more cards in their hand, you get to gain a memory, which is going to be nice. And with its inheritable, letting you bounce level 3s. Otherwise, EX4 one is just as good. It really doesn't matter. Just try to build whichever you can as you're building your stack, and you really want to prioritize that as you go. Next, you know, when you're ready to go, you want to move it up and potentially digivolve into this MirageGaogamon, simply because to utilize this when digivolving effect to bounce when your opponent's level 4 or lower. And usually you can retain your turn if you had a Thomas, you know, right here, which is really good. So then you can start your turn at 3 memory. Otherwise, this Thomas is also really good for later on when you're going to be making lots of aggressive attacks as well. Then it doesn't really matter again what memory you might be at the turn. Just passing to your opponent by going into this MirageGaogamon by bouncing a level 5 or lower, but sometimes you want to calculate and sort of make sure what's a good advantage to sort of like utilize, whether if they have no Digimon, then that means they get to add a security into their hand. And I also sometimes treat that as almost like trashing a security, and getting rid of security helps you push for game even faster. After that, you gain a memory too. So remember guys, every time you bounce a card back to your opponent's hand, or if you make them draw, or if they search again once again, you will always be gaining memory with its all turns effects, which can help you disrupt the opponent's turn, and it's very difficult to play around it, and it actually slows down your opponent's game pace. And the sooner you get into MirageGaogamon in any form of this one in particular, you can actually just be super strong. Now, moving into our simple MirageGaogamon Burst Mode combo, you know, of course, you just want to attack into your opponent right here first and try to make some as much attacks as you can. Meanwhile, if you can bounce some stuff, draw one with Vanyamon, depending on what inheritables you have. So then when your opponent has 8 normal cards in their hand, and when you're attacking, you get to unsuspend quite frequently, which is going to be super good and really, really nice. Then this is now when you want to start, you know, maybe go into your MirageGaogamon Burst Mode right here. And what you want to be always doing is making sure to count your opponent's cards in hand, making sure that they're the sweet number 8, which is going to be super important. But for MirageGaogamon's Burst Mode specifically, you want to make sure that they're always constantly having 9 or more. So this is why some of the inheritables of bouncing really comes in handy and really helps. Now, this is how you pull off like as many swings as possible. And because this deck unsuspends so many times, you can actually just take down your opponents very quickly. Now, first and foremost, when digivolving, you return one of your opponent's Digimon back to their hand. Once you return it, then you also gain a memory for however many they have. Usually they have 8 or even more. You can actually gain so much memory off this card. It's going to be super good. You can digivolve it for 5 costs and you can still retain your turn. If not, if you're going to go for that game-winning play, that's when you actually want to return the Thomas back to your hand. You usually return the Thomas back to your hand when you're about to actually knowing that you're trying to finish to go for game in that particular turn. So let's just say you do anyways, and right here, you will swing with this MirageGaogamon right here, and then basically make your opponent bottom deck cards from their hand all the way back to them having 8 left, and then you get to unsuspend right here to make basically that one check. And then you get to this time now say you get to use MirageGaogamon once again to swing, and if you have any inheritables that returns further cards from your opponent's board back to their hand, such as say for this Gaogamon right here that bounces a level 3, and you do, that means they added an extra card back to their hand, and that means now they're at 9 cards in their hand all over again, meaning that you get a bottom deck 1 and then unsuspend once again. And then in any situations when you have multiple Thomases from BT13, it makes it really good, because then you can loop those combos over and over again. So now you can swing if you ever had that Thomas, you get to suspend the Thomas, both you and your opponent will draw a card, then you get to activate its when attacking effect again, which is not once per turn, bottom deck their 1 card or whatever down to 8 again, and then unsuspend. Swing again, activate Thomas, both players draw a card, again, same thing, bottom deck them, unsuspend. And you just keep repeating this and keep swinging and swinging, and then if you have this Thomas as well, you can just finish it by unsuspending once again, and then swing. You guys can see you want to really be juggling different effects in different ways to continue adding cards to your opponents back to the hand, like I mentioned, either by bouncing their lower level Digimon back to the hand, so then they fulfill the requirements of 9, otherwise using Thomas to help each player to draw 1, again, keeping in that special number threshold, and again, you make so many attacks with this, and you simply just win the game with a super strong body on the board just like that, which is really cool. Another tip is, in any situations when you don't see this MirageGaogamon and you see some advantages that you want to play the BT13 one, just so that you can bounce your opponent's Tamer to really set them back, really good effect, because it also lets you play a Thomas on board immediately. And having multiple Thomases on the board is always going to be really nice for you, just because you can actually use up more effects right here. Again, if you have multiples of this one, multiples of this one, they always give you value when you go to your big top end combos to finish it off. If you ever need to control the board, then play the Full Moon Meteor Impact as well to bounce anything and whatnot. So that's how you really want to be playing the deck overall. Just really straightforward, super powerful combo, keeping in mind on your opponent's cards count on their hand, and by doing so you can easily just swing for many checks, many attacks, and non-stop, and it's just completely so powerful and super fun to play as well. Now wrap up for the deck profile for today. If you guys enjoyed the video and found it helpful, please give it a like. If you have any suggestions, recommendations, or questions, be sure to share it with everyone in the comments down below. Once again, be sure to subscribe and turn on that notification bell to stay tuned for more BT13 content. If you guys just can't wait and want to see early deck lists and first drafts, then once again, definitely join the Avault Club. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. You guys have a great day, great night, wherever you are. See you next video, and this is Avault, signing out.